What is up? Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Book Club with Kate and Kelly. I should have a little like the button to do that. Book club and then hit the button. Yes, that's what we do. I'm live, baby. I'm doing this podcast live every Monday on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. And you can find links to all of those on my blog, CadenKellysBlog.wordpress.com. Come join me Monday mornings to get this juicy podcast live. You could comment in the things and talk about your feelings and your thoughts on the books and the things that I'm saying, the things I'm saying from these books, all that jazz. This podcast, baby, we're here to improve our health, our wealth, our wisdom, and our peace. And I do this in conjunction with another podcast called Here's the Point. It's the same thing as this podcast, except it's in 15 minutes. So if you want to go back through another book, but you don't want to listen to 90 minutes of content, you could go back and listen to 15 minutes on Here's the Point with Caden Kelly. Also available on my blog, also available on Instagram. You can find all the links on my blog. Again, CadenKellysBlog.wordpress.com. And that's, I got to apologize. It took me a minute to get started because I was trying to get the link from my YouTube to share on the Discord. I'm thinking about making like a Cadence Podcast Discord, but what would we do there? What would I do there? What would anybody do there? But that's what people do. They get Discord so they can have Discord. Anyway, I was sharing it with my boys, and when I opened YouTube, there was this pickleball clip, and I totally got consumed. I took the bait, I clicked the video, and I watched like 2 minutes. And then I stopped eating breakfast. I had where is it? Yeah, it's right behind me. Let's get it out of here. It's right in the middle of the frame. It's just a bowl of eggs and avocado, which is delicious. But anyway, I got caught up watching that, so I apologize for starting a little late. Let's see. How we doing this week? Last week, what did we do? Played a lot of pickleball. I anticipate some more pickleball coming through. What else are we doing? Played some poker over the weekend. That was fun. Lost some money. Nothing was going my way. Sometimes the cards just don't fall for you, Sometimes, and that's most of the time for me. And then I try to gamble my way or bluff my way through it, and then I just get called on all my bluffs. I'm a terrible bluffer, I guess. Or everybody just has winner hands when I bluff. It sucks. I'm really bad at poker. But that was fun. Yeah, not much else. Just back to the grind. So let's talk. Let's get into this. Last week, I read The Greatest Story Ever Told So Far by Lawrence M. Krauss. The subtitle is Why Are We Here? Awesome cover, dude. I read the preface. That was, I was just ready to rock and roll with this book. I was ready to lose myself in this book. And I did not. I got really discouraged reading this book because it's the preface and the epilogue to the book are all of this existential philosophy, which is 1% of the whole book, and then the whole rest of the book is physics and theoretical physics and explaining basically how we understand the universe today, which is fascinating, which is amazing that there are people who understand the laws of the universe to very, very microscopic detail. And that's what the book was about, talking about like shit like photons and atoms and neutrons and neutrinos and Higgs law and all the physics and metaphysics, theoretical physics. Those are the two that I remember the most that he referenced. And I just wasn't into it, man. Yeah, I said as I listened to the book, I made a note like halfway through. I said, I wish I understood the health, wealth, wisdom, and peace like this guy understands physics. And this guy knows his fucking physics. I there was just no way to know what the book was going to be about without reading it. So I read it, and I'm glad I did, because I did gain some insight from hearing a bunch of physics talk that I, one, am not super interested in, and two, didn't really entirely grasp. But I did gain some insight. So before I get too ahead of myself, let me tell you about Lawrence. Oh, geez. Lawrence M. Krauss. He's a renowned theoretical physicist, is director of the Origins Project at Arizona State University. He is the author of more than 300 scientific publications and 9 books, including the international bestsellers A Universe from Nothing and The Physics of Star Trek. The recipient of numerous awards, Krauss is a regular columnist for newspapers and magazines, including The New Yorker, and he appears frequently on radio, television, and in feature films. Krauss lives in Portland, Oregon. This book was published 2017, first edition by Atria Paperback, which I'm not familiar with, but that's 2017. Brilliant dude, you know? I remember taking a physics class in high school. Mr. Lindsay, I think was his name. And I didn't love the class. But I love the philosophy to what we understand about physics and about the universe and how things work. And so basically this podcast, what I'm going to do is cherry pick all of his data. Hundreds of years of physicist research, from Albert Einstein back to Newton. I believe Newton was one of the first physicists. And they just understood the world, the universe. They all understand the universe and its complexity at a very, very, very specific detail. And the whole kind of like the point of science and the point of physics is we don't understand the whole picture, but we're getting a better understanding of it as we go. And I shouldn't say we because I'm not included, but like Lawrence M. Krauss, him and other physicists are gaining deeper insights as to the function of the universe with all their research conducted over the years, and it's taken little by little, but as they continue to study, they get a deeper insight. It's not conclusive, but it's getting more refined, right? It's not like we don't understand it 100%. And I actually don't know if it's possible to understand the universe 100%. Maybe. But there's that's the kind of the point of discoveries is we're constantly learning. It's constantly discovering new shit. Anyway, I hope you got your coffee. I've got mine. I don't know if we're going to make it to the 60-minute mark on this podcast, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be rich with content, which it will be. So let me pull up my notes on the greatest story ever told so far. Okay, so yeah, I got some awesome notes in the forward, in the does he call it the preface or the forward? I wrote down forward, which probably means it's called yeah. The forward and the prologue. That must be the prologue then. What's funny to me is he uses this. There's 3 parts to this book. He may be a physicist, but he's not above the standard outline for books, for writing a book. It's got 3 parts, and they are Genesis, Exodus, and Revelations. And then all the chapter titles are some kind of play on scriptures. Rather, the chapter title isn't a play on scriptures, but what would you call the quote that comes after most books have like a quote or a summary or something. So like chapter 1 is called From the Arm Wire to the Cave. And then under that, he has a scripture. The simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. Proverbs 14:18. He does that throughout the book, and he does it sort of ironically, because in the foreword, rather in the prologue, he describes that I don't know if he is an acclaimed atheist, but he's a scientist, and he does not let's see, how do you spell his name? Lawrence Krauss religion. Okay, so this is from wikipedia.org, most trusted. Mashed Potatoes, what's up? Welcome. We're doing The Greatest Story Ever Told So Far by Lawrence Krauss. You've already missed the intro. Krauss has described himself as an atheist and takes part in public debates on religion. Krauss is featured in the 2013 documentary The Unbelievers, in which he and Richard Dawkins, who another famous atheist. Oh, I'm sorry. He's not atheist. It says anti-theist, not atheist. Krauss describes himself as an anti-theist. Okay. And Richard Dawkins, I know his name. I think he's an atheist, but I don't want to speak for him. Okay, in which he and Richard Dawkins travel across the globe speaking publicly about the importance of science and reason as opposed to religion and superstition. And that's basically the whole introduction to the book, is his skepticism of religion and his confidence in science. So in the prologue, I said being uncomfortable is a virtue, not a hindrance. Not a hindrance. Being uncomfortable is a virtue, not a hindrance. Consider our evolution. Change is uncomfortable and painful. And we just talked about that in another book too. Maybe it was Untethered Soul. Yeah, I think it was Untethered Soul. Change, yeah, I think it was, because there's a whole chapter on pain and dealing with pain. But pain isn't bad. Pain actually, if you subject yourself to the right kinds of pain, then you're setting yourself up for growth. Like going to the gym, or like reading books, or doing mental exercises, or disciplining yourself and showing virtues like patience and temperance and moderation. Those things aren't inherently pleasant, but they make you more resilient and strong. So pain isn't, and I actually don't know why he said that, but that was part of the prologue. Being uncomfortable is a virtue, not a hindrance. Why do I say hindrance? It's hindrance. Consider our evolution. Okay, his goal in this book is to, quote, move beyond the surface level of reality and connect the world we know with the deepest corners of the invisible world around us, close quote, to discuss space, time, and the forces that operate within them, to prod us into a new reality, not to provoke us. That's probably why he mentioned that, because he goes through how uncomfortable it is to consider a universe without inherent purpose. It's discouraging to some people, and it invokes fear. But what he's saying is we should be able to embrace the realities of the universe without fear. And later on, he explains that one of the most beautiful parts about a universe without a divine purpose is we get to create it or discover it. But he says, and I think I made a note, and I'm jumping ahead, but I think he makes a note something along the lines that a universe with a divine purpose isn't as interesting as a universe without one, or a universe with one yet to be discovered. Anyway, but that's his purpose behind this book, is to move beyond the move beyond the surface level of reality and connect the world we know with the deepest corners of the invisible world around us. A universe without divine purpose is more interesting than one with preordained purpose. There we go. Why don't I just read my notes? Because they're all there. And I always jump ahead of myself. All right. So yeah, that's the book. That's the prologue. And then the rest of the book, honestly, I might have a couple notes from things that he said, but basically, it's just a bunch of elaboration on the origins of physics and what we've learned since. So, I didn't take notes on neutrons and protons and all that. I really it isn't as captivating to me as the philosophy to it, as what he is explaining in the prologue and in the epilogue. So I apologize to you physicists out there or people who appreciate the science behind the universe, but I'm not as interested in the great specifics of physics and theoretical physics as I am in the philosophy to it. So I digress. Chapter 1, he uses Plato's cave allegory as the foundation of this chapter and what turned out to be for this book. How many of you are familiar with Plato's cave analogy or allegory? It is it's a story about people who are their only experience with the world is with shadows, and then one of them breaks out of this cave and sees the world. They see light, they see physical objects, and they see the shadows that they cast. And this person goes back to the people in the cave. I think it's his family or something. It tries to explain that these shadows are attached to physical objects and light and this and that and this and that. And but the people in the cave who have not seen the world or who only experienced the shadows have no idea what he's talking about. They can't mentally grasp these ideas. And that's the foundation to this book, really, is we can only understand what we can see. And it takes a whole lot of experience and experiments and really a lot of explanation to learn something that we don't normally interact with. So for physicists and theoretical physicists, they're looking at things that we can't just naturally observe. In fact, a lot of it is predictions on how a certain element will interact with another element or in a specific environment, and which might not be normal or natural. So it requires a whole bunch of experiment and practice and observation. And then these physicists and scientists observe something or discover something that's either not naturally occurring or not naturally observable, like atoms. Like we can't just see atoms or the things that make up our world. But these guys figure it out eventually, and or they discover these things, and then they try to explain it to us. That's what they're doing. That's what this book is about. He's trying to explain things that we don't normally interact with, and I think that's a pretty good. I think that's a pretty good explanation to the Plato's cave. So Wikipedia has a little. I'll just read because I want to be true to the allegory, true to Plato. So from Wikipedia, allegory of the cave. The allegory of the cave, or Plato's cave, is an allegory presented by the Greek philosopher Plato in his work Republic to compare the effect of education and the lack of it in our nature. It is written as a dialogue between Plato's brother Glaucon and his mentor Socrates. I think I said it's Glaucon. It's narrated by the latter, so by Socrates. The allegory is presented after the analogy of the sun. The allegory is presented after the analogy of the sun. I'm not familiar. Oh, I can hover it over it though, and it says the analogy of the sun is found in the 6th book of the Republic, written by the Greek philosopher Plato, as a dialogue between his brother. Okay, it's the exact same thing. Bleh. Okay, moving on. In the allegory, The Cave, Plato describes a group of people who have lived chained to the wall of a cave all of their lives, facing a blank wall. The people watch shadows projected on the wall from objects passing in front of a fire behind them and give names to these shadows. The shadows are the prisoner's reality, but are not accurate representations of the real world. The shadows represent the fragment of reality that we can normally perceive through our senses, while the objects under the sun represent the true forms of objects that we can only perceive through reason. 3 higher levels exist. The natural sciences, so the 3 higher levels exist. The natural sciences, mathematics, geometry, and deductive logic, and the theory of forms. Socrates, I'm almost done with this, by the way. Socrates explained how the philosopher is like a prisoner who is freed from the cave and comes to understand that the shadows on the wall are actually not the direct source of the images seen. A philosopher aims to understand and perceive the higher levels of reality. However, the other inmates of the cave do not even desire to leave their prison, for they know no better life. Socrates remarks that this allegory can be paired with previous writings, namely the analogy of the sun and the analogy of the divided line. Okay, I think I did okay explaining it. And then there's a whole bunch of dialogue further on Wikipedia if you wish to get more on this. But that's the general idea. Steez TV, yes, that one. Allegory of the Cave. Mashed potatoes. I want to be more interested in physics and astronomy than I am. I bought a Neil deGrasse Tyson book like a year ago and read like 2 chapters. Well, yeah, I agree because fundamentally I am interested in the making of the universe, but I wasn't captivated listening to this book for the 11 hours that I did. Like I am with other books. Like I really was captivated by The Untethered Soul, which is just a bunch of basically religious texts, a bunch of philosophy. And to be fair, everybody has their own things that turn them on, right? So it's like I'm not naturally drawn to physics, but the idea of physics is interesting. And it kind of just felt like sitting in a lecture hall in a class that for a topic that, I'm just not like super captivated in. He did an excellent job of describing the processes, but I'll just be honest. I just didn't love it. So, I know we can't be interested in everything, or we can't be masters of everything. Like this guy, he's so good in physics, but I bet you that, he probably sucks at a lot of other things, right? This is, I'm making a joke really, but the truth is, if we go back to my philosophy on exceptionalism or well-roundedness to live a good life, you can either maximize exceptionalism or you can maximize your well-roundedness to live the best life. I don't really think there's an in-between. You can be like one of the best at at physics, like Krauss, and neglect several other areas of your life that that you hold value to, or you give all things that you value a somewhat equal amount of attention, so that you have a good balance of everything. You're not exceptional in anything, but you're really good, or you're well-rounded in all areas. Anyway, so yeah, I bet Krauss is one of the best in physics, but I bet he sucks at pickleball, dude. I bet he's bad at all sports. Actually, that's my bet. I bet he sucks at all sports. All right, so the Plato's Cave allegory is the foundation to the whole book, really. The ultimate purpose for science and religion is the longing for something else, something that gives the universe meaning. Fascinating to me to compare science and religion in that specific regard. That remember all of our conversations before that it's a biological tendency for all humans to assign meaning to their life, to assign meaning to their suffering, to their pleasantries, to their successes, to their failures, because a world without meaning doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And humans all of the time, that happens to us and to the world around us, to the people that we love, because of whatever reason you feel. I mean, why do you create reason for your suffering, or for your success, or for your pleasure? What, like, oh, I got this promotion because I'm a hard worker. I got this promotion because I slept with my boss. I got this girlfriend because I'm really attractive, or I'm really funny, or my girlfriend broke up with me because she's an asshole, or I'm an asshole. Like, things don't just happen. The world doesn't just happen around us, and we don't think. We're always we have the tendency to. Okay, I'm over explaining it. So he says the reason for any science or any religion is to assign meaning to the universe, to what we don't understand. I'm going to keep going before I... Oh, okay. So some guy named Philip, I don't want to find his name because I missed his last name. So he said, reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. Philip Dick. Okay, so Philip Dick said, reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. That's reality. I find that significant because, for some reason, I still think about that documentary, What is a Woman? And I'm not going to get into the political mess that documentary is, or the fuss that it creates, but lots of it's denying reality doesn't mean that thing will go away. If I were to, I did see one thing that I will poke fun at is I saw a TikTok of some lady explaining how to use frog pronouns for a person. So because someone identifies as a frog, and so they were explaining frogs, pronouns. And how, people get to choose how they identify. Ribbit. That's really good. That was St. Steve's TV. Go find him. He's funny. Yeah. How much denying reality doesn't mean it goes away. I'm gonna keep going on my thoughts. I'm getting to the point. Regarding absolute claims and religious sanctity, quote, 500 years of science has liberated us from the shackles of enforced ignorance. He explains recent discoveries between scientific theory. Yeah. This is a different thought. I gotta separate those. Okay, yeah. 500 years of science has liberated us from the shackles of enforced ignorance. What he's referring to, that's a quote from him in some newspaper, I think, of explaining that before physics and before science, we used God and gods to explain our universe, to give our lives purpose. And science, what he's saying is science has liberated us from those shackles because instead of plagues occurring, or famine, or drought, and people saying God has cursed us, or God has blessed us because of our faith, or whatever, science says there's a plague because of X, Y, and Z, pathogens and rats and shit. And there's famine because X, Y, and Z. I don't know shit about climate. I'm not making any claims. I'm not a fucking scientist. I'm here to talk about the philosophy. So that's I also find that significant. He said we use science and religion to explain our universe, and basically he's critical of religion because there's no scientific evidence of it, and he's a scientist, and all he does is find evidence for his claims. That's what scientists do. So, and I can hear in my head when I was a religious person, the thought that God uses science to create the universe. Fair enough. We still don't have evidence that there is a God, and then I could hear the passages in the scriptures saying, "Well, just look around you and look at the trees, and look at water, and look at the mountains. How can there not be a God? Look at these. Look at these. Whatever. Look at food. Look how plants grow. Look how intricate the leaves are. How can there not be a God?" Well, actually, he's a really powerful quote he says later on. I'm just going to jump right to it. The lack of understanding isn't evidence of God. It's just evidence of lack of understanding. So if anything resonates with me, it's evidence to a claim makes more sense than believing in something because it makes sense, or creating something out of thin air because it makes sense. Scientists create so the last part of this chapter 1, this is all chapter 1, by the way, and then I'm going to basically skip to the end of the book. At the end of this, while I was listening to in the middle of the week, I saw a TikTok of a scientist explaining the difference between theory and hypothesis, and saying that people are disclaiming scientific theories because, well, if it's a theory, it's not true. It's a theory. And this is how I've always thought. And he says the difference is a theory is an idea proposed by scientists that is consistently proven true. It has not yet been disproven. It's not concrete. We're still working on it, but it has not yet been disproven. So like Big Bang theory is a theory, but it doesn't mean that it's 100% guaranteed true as understood today. It means all of the experiments, all of the research that we've done to support this claim have supported it, or not even to support it, but to understand this claim have supported it. That's the point of science, is to elaborate on ideas, on a hypothesis, and to see which way it goes. And most scientific discoveries, well, I won't say that because I don't know shit about science. I don't. But the difference between a theory and a hypothesis is saying that this is probably what happens, but the theory is testing that hypothesis, and then the results are consistently proven. In fact, I bet you Google again, difference between scientific theory, theory and law. So this is probably, in general, this is is it LiveScience or LiveScience.com? Probably LiveScience.com says, in general, a scientific law is the description of an observed phenomena. It doesn't explain why the phenomenon exists or what causes it. The explanation for a phenomenon is called, why am I burping so much? The explanation of a phenomenon is called a scientific theory. It is a misconception that theories turn into laws with enough research. Okay, so that's not exactly what I was saying. I'm going to change it to hypothesis. And this is from the Merriam-Webster.com website. Merriam-Webster. In scientific reasoning, a hypothesis is constructed before any applicable research is done. A theory, on the other hand, is supported by evidence. It's a principle formed as an attempt to explain things that have already been substantiated by data. Okay, have I made my point? I'm explaining a ton of this because this is like the chunk of what I'm going to be talking about, because after chapter 1, there's not much for me to say because it's all of the science and the scientists that it's explaining how the universe functions today, and then part 3, Revelation, is really hypotheses, or hypothesis is. It's it's is a hypothesis on the universe, what we might discover, are ideas based on what we already understand of the universe, and trying to figure out more, continuing to go down the rabbit hole. What I also appreciate from this book is how each, like, if you are interested in science and physics and shit, read this book. It's really good, and you'll probably understand it, or you'll probably really appreciate it for what I'm saying. It starts with, like, chapter 2 is explaining physicist Faraday's discovery to how physicist Faraday discovered electricity. And it really is like a ladder from electricity to magnetism to space and time. So it's just the chain reaction of one discovery led to another discovery, led to another discovery, that led to the world that we live in, the world that we understand, and then has created questions for what more is there to discover about the universe. And basically the end of the book is like current theories and hypothesis on dark matter, on like other dimensions in the universe, things that have not been tested and proven, so they're hypothesi. But everything up to this point, like electricity and magnetism and electromagnetism and space and time and space-time, are all theories that have been proven, that are substantiated by data, like the Merriam-Webster website says. I love that connection, and I love that TikTok is listening to me and knows that it knows what I want to hear. It knows that I'm interested in hearing the difference between a scientific theory and a scientific hypothesis, because it fit right into this podcast. So, have I made any points yet? You know me well enough to know that I'm critical of religion and spirituality, and so I'm getting a little bit of confirmation bias from the scientist from chapter 1, explaining that we use religion to explain the universe, but now we have science, and so we don't need to use we don't need to rely on our ideas of the universe. We can now test them and prove and to understand the actual meaning of the universe. Well, God uses science to create the universe. All right, whatever. Hopefully, eventually, what would be awesome is if all of these discoveries led to the discovery of a higher power, of God. That would be crazy, but we aren't there yet. So we can't say that with certainty, scientifically, that there's a higher power. But we can say that we don't understand everything. And so we're going to continue to study and experiment and learn, right? We're going to just keep figuring it out. We're going to keep trying. And not we as in me, but we as in the scientists that are actually doing it. All right, I'm going to move on. So chapter 2 is about Faraday discovering electricity. I started connecting the dots. I started doing all of these, like the building up the ladder. I thought it was interesting, but then I basically gave up on it because I'm not here to explain how Faraday discovered electricity. I'm not here to explain how physicist Maxwell discovered the interconnectedness of magnetism and electricity using mathematics and light. I'm not here to explain that. I'm not here to explain that. So I started doing that. I gave up on that down the road. Something I did find interesting in chapter 6, the shadows of reality. I don't remember. It might have been Einstein. Maybe not. I don't use his name, so I won't use his name. I said electrons and hot atoms emit photons that didn't exist before spontaneously. And photons is light. And I don't expect you to know that because I didn't know that, but I remember when I relearned it, I remembered that I learned that originally in science. But photons are light. Light is photons. And he says his proposal is, why are we comfortable with photons existing spontaneously from a light bulb coming into existence from nothing, but we're not comfortable with the universe coming into existence from nothing? You turn off your light, there's no lights, there's no light, and then you turn on the switch, and then there's light. There's photons that didn't exist before, and now they exist. And he's saying that this is basically what the universe did. In one moment, the universe didn't exist, and then in another moment, it did, and there was a bunch of light. It was basically like a switch. And again, this is there's no claims to this. I just found that train of thought interesting. We're comfortable with light coming into existence spontaneously, but we're not comfortable with the universe coming into existence spontaneously. Chapter 13 is where I already mentioned the lack of understanding. He says this several times, by the way, not just this once. But he says several times the lack of understanding isn't evidence that there's God. It's just it's just evidence that of lack of understanding. It's really easy to just, like drawing conclusions way too quickly without enough evidence or without enough data to say, we can't exactly prove how the universe came into existence, so it must have been God. Or we can't immediately prove why somebody got hit by a bus, so it must have been God. But there's just more to learn about this is a really dark analogy, but it's the analogy I made. We draw conclusions too quickly, like a toxic boyfriend or girlfriend. So we jump to conclusions, and we shouldn't do that. That's not responsible. In my head, that's not responsible. Part 3, he says, quote, "The universe is fathomable after all." Yes. After all, we can we can come to terms with the universe, and they're doing it little by little, breaking down the fundamental aspects of how the universe was created and what it's doing, where it came from, where it's going. The universe, after all, is fathomable. Chapter 23, I said, the universe operates according to these laws, whether we exist or not. Likely, it doesn't give a shit that we exist at all. We are not the significant part of the universe, but religion will make us, not even religion, but humanists will make us believe we are the center of the universe. But really, the universe has existed for billions of years before us, right? And then likely billions of years after humans are extinct, if we ever go extinct, if we don't exalt ourselves. But the universe doesn't give a damn about us, doesn't give a shit that we exist. The universe existed and operated according to these laws well before we ever lived or could think about them, and will continue to operate according to these laws after we cease to exist. The interesting part to this, I've heard, he said this, and I remember, I always struggle saying their name, but it's the YouTube channel Kurzgesagt, that German science astrology page with the little birds and the awesome animations that I love so much. They have a video called Optimistic Nihilism, and which it's their proposal that there may not be any inherent meaning to the universe, but that means that isn't gruesome. What that means is we get to create our own meaning. We get to discover the meaning. Right? Like I was saying at the beginning of the episode. Since there is no God, we get to create our own meaning, or we get to discover what meaning there actually is. um, which is more exciting than a preordained. Well, I guess it's actually kind of the same thing, a preordained. Because if we discover meaning, that means it was preordained, right? But if it, but tech, well, whatever. I think I'm making sense. We get to discover whatever there is in the universe, whether there's meaning or not. We just get to uncover the complexity of the how the universe functions. So, that's taking nihilism in in a optimistic way, in an optimistic pursuit. That's on my notes from the chunk of the book, from the meat. It's dreadful to think or to accept that we may exist on this planet, after all, with no meaning or with no purpose, with no divine path. We may just, for some reason, be able to. For some reason, we're born and we can think about our existence and the world around us for some reason, and then we die and then we cease to exist. And the truth is, we didn't remember all of those billions of years before our existence. Who's to say that we're going to remember any of the time after our existence? If those billions of years passed in a moment, then the next billion years after our existence will pass in a moment. It's dreadful, but the beauty to it is we get to create our own meaning in our own life. We don't have to rely on. Well, this is where the I'm conflicted, because I appreciate that there is religion and there are functions and systems in the world that give people meaning, that help people live better lives, that create unity in their community and their families, and give them purpose, and give them peace in life, and give them peace towards death. Those are not bad. That's not bad. I did ask my brother. I was having this conversation with my brother last week while I was reading this, and I was thinking, when is it appropriate, or rather, when is it inappropriate to rely on these functions of religion and cults and groups and all of the functions that exist in the world that rely on just belief and faith without any evidence. Like, I'm trying to be broad, but I'll be specific for a moment. Because I was a Mormon, I can use that faith to say, when is it inappropriate to, rather, when should you disconnect from that and rely on reality, right? Because I remember growing up and really in the MTC, going on my mission, learning that most Christian dogma believes that humans came into existence 6,000 years ago, or maybe even I think maybe the world was created 6,000 years ago. But science says that the Earth has been around for millions of years, the universe for billions, and humans for hundreds of thousands, and then our ancestors for millions of years before today. So how does that make sense? The way I made sense of it in my head was, evolution is real, science is real. We can't deny science. It's irresponsible to deny reality, like I was explaining earlier. Denying it doesn't mean it goes away. So to say, the way I justified it was, humans have existed for the millions of years, or at least our ancestors. For humans, it's been at least 200,000 years. And then 6,000 years ago, God introduced spirits to Homo sapiens, 6,000 years ago. And that's when we gained our consciousness. But even still, that doesn't make sense, because now I've learned, because 10,000 years ago was when we learned how to do agriculture. And then all the time before that, we operated in little tribes. little small knit humanoid groups, and they had language, and they had rituals and religions, and they tried to make sense of the world around them more than 10,000 years ago. So even still, the Christian dogma that humans came into existence 6,000 years ago doesn't make sense. That's my little philosophical religious rabbit hole, and it stems from optimistic nihilism. And I really recommend, if any of what I just said provokes you or interests you, I would recommend going to check out the Kutzgesagt YouTube video, Optimistic Nihilism. I resonate with that deeply, because it's not that I don't think that there's a God, it's that there's just no evidence for a God. I think there's more evidence to support the majesty of Mother Nature than there is to support the reality of any God or spirit or whatever. And I could be so naive to say that, but that's just where I'm at. And if you're listening to this podcast, and so you're just listening to me, that's it. Doesn't mean that you're wrong, or doesn't mean that I'm right. That's just where I'm at. All right, final thoughts and the epilogue. When people ask why a system operates, physicists ask how, and then they figure it out. So if someone asks, why do, and maybe not even physicists, but maybe just science. When someone asks why a system operates, science asks how, and then they figure it out. Why do ants live in colonies, and why do they respect their queen, and why this, why that? And then science says this, how do they do this? And then they discover things like pheromones and their little antennas and their language, and they discover the how it works. Why does that operate the way it does? Well, then you got to go back, you trace ant what's like their ancestral lineage, why they behave that way, what their ancestors were doing that led to whatever, to ants being what they are today. We are hardwired to understand ourselves and our place in the universe. Yes, I talked about this. We are always trying to create meaning to our suffering and to our pleasures. Quote, we exist in a universe whose laws exist independent of our own being. Yes, the universe has existed for a long time before humans and probably doesn't give a shit that we exist. Oh, another point from the Kutzgesagt video. I don't think I said this. There may not be life beyond Earth because we don't know, because we haven't discovered it. But at the very least, if this universe is infinite and dead, at the very least, we humans on Earth in the Milky Way galaxy can say that we are the thinking and feeling parts to the universe. We're all made of the same cosmic dust that from exploding stars. That's us, baby. We're the result of exploding stars. And if you don't find that incredible in any way, I don't know what will. I don't know. Well, maybe God turns you on, but I find it so fascinating. We are literally made of stardust from exploding stars. And for some reason, life has developed, and we grow on this earth, and we have a brain, and now we can talk and think about stars and coming from stars. We can work to uncover the mysteries of the universe. That might be our only purpose as humans. Who knows? Maybe once we uncover the mysteries of the universe will say that, and that was it, and the end, and then humans just are dead, right? And there's nothing else after that, right? At the very least, we are the thinking and feeling parts of the universe. We can talk about it. We can observe basically ourselves. As we look at the universe, we're observing ourselves. This is all really theoretical and deep philosophy, but this is where my brain goes. Quote, the universe of our existence is a shadow of our reality. Yeah, the universe of our existence is a shadow of our reality. What we can see, what we observe, is only the shadow to what's actually happening in the world or happening in the universe. It takes adventure and experimenting and experience to see what's beyond the shadows, to see what creates the shadows and what creates the thing that creates the shadows and so forth. All we can see really are the shadows, and we think that's our universe. We think that's all there is. This is Plato's allegory. But there's a whole world out there to be uncovered, to be discovered. That is the source, that is the root cause of everything that we observe. That's the cause of the shadows. The universe of our existence is a shadow of our reality. I said, the more I learn, quote from Albert Einstein and Socrates said something similar. The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. We should not be afraid or upset that we don't know, quote, where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Anyone that claims they know is trying to cover their discomfort that exists without knowing. To me, it seems more responsible to admit that you don't know the answers than to believe in something that isn't true, even if it makes you feel better. And I guess this is what I'm saying. Instead of saying isn't true, maybe I would say isn't proven. I'm going to change out my notes. So I'll say it again. To me, it seems more responsible to admit you don't know the answers than to believe in something that isn't proven, even if it makes you feel better. If believing in God brings you peace with death, of the death of loved ones, or your own death, I think that's a good thing. But I think it's better to embrace the what we know about death, and that it's inevitable, and that there might not be anything after death. And if you want to believe that there is something after death, then that brings you peace. I think it's irresponsible to tear that down in anybody. But what's more irresponsible is to create rules for a happy life after death and then to impose those rules on other people. I think that's more irresponsible than believing in life after death. Anyway, I've gone on my religious theoretical rants. That's how I'm going to wrap it up. The more I learn, the more I realize how much I do not know. All we can do is continue to learn, continue to experiment, continue to hypothesize, and then be proven right or be proven wrong, and then to elaborate on that, and then to try something new and come up with new ideas and keep going and keep going and keep going. So I didn't get a whole lot from this book, from the science behind all of the details, but I still really enjoy the insight from the philosophy, trying to understand. I'm not trying to understand how the universe operates. Like, I'm not trying to understand the physics. I'm trying to make sense of what to do with the information. So we learned that there are a bunch of things that create the universe, and there's a lot of shit that we don't know. So my conclusion from a book like this is there are people way smarter than me that are doing the work to understand the mysteries of the universe, and it's my responsibility to be honest about the results and to incorporate the results in an honest way instead of jumping to conclusions or creating narratives that fit my beliefs or that fit my or that cover my discomforts or that mask my fear. right? It's more responsible to say, I have no idea where I came from before I was alive. I have no idea, like where my consciousness was or why I'm conscious. But it's more responsible to say I don't know why than to say, so it must be God or it must be spirits. I must have a spirit in this body that makes me unique. That seems irresponsible to me. Even if it makes you a better person, I'm not saying it's bad and that you shouldn't believe in those things. I'm saying that it just seems a little irresponsible than to say we don't know but this is what we do know, X, Y, and Z. That's it. That's the greatest story ever told so far. Why Are We Here? By Lawrence M. Krauss. Again, if you like physics, go read this book. If you want to dive into the meaning of the universe, but you don't want to listen to or read 11 hours worth of physics content or theoretical physics, maybe just read the prologue and the epilogue. And the first chapter. Again, the first chapter was really insightful too. Yeah, that's it. Next week, baby. Let's go. What are we doing next week? We're doing a book called Missing Each Other: How to Cultivate Meaningful Connections by Edward Brodkin and Ashley Palithra. I'll figure out their names. Missing Each Other: How to Cultivate Meaningful Connections. I listened to a podcast on Plain English with Derek Thompson about social media, the impacts of the internet on our kids, and I found it was based on a book, another book, but I found this one that's similar idea. I have not done another book that was similar to Adam Alter's Irresistible, and that was one of the very first books I ever did early last year. I haven't done another book close to like the impact of social media, not that I can recall. This one's supposed to be right up that alley. Let me read you a little bit about the authors for their credentials, because we don't want to be conned like the fucking 4 personality types guy. Edward S. Brodkin is an associate professor of psychiatry with tenure at the Perelman, Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. He's the founder and director of the Adult Autism Spectrum Program at Penn Medicine. His research focuses on social neuroscience and the autism spectrum in adults. Ashley, that's the first author. The second author, Ashley A. Palithra, is a therapist and clinical researcher. She is currently pursuing her PhD in clinical psychology at the Catholic University of America. She is the author of numerous published research articles in the fields of resilience and social emotional functioning in youth, autism research, and social neuroscience. I'm really excited for this one. This will be a good one for next week. We're in fucking October, baby. The weeks just keep flying by. Oh, next week is Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day. Which is it going to be? But I should be here. If not, it'll be Tuesday. But I should be here. I don't know why I wouldn't be here. So there you have it. My boys, thanks for showing up. You know, I appreciate you. If you enjoy my podcast, I would love it if you would if you'd give me reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or if you'd share it with someone you think would benefit from a message like this. You could check out more content. I post on my blog weekly. I in the works of making short videos again. I have a shorter podcast for more concentrated information on these books, all available on cadeandkellysblog.wordpress.com. And if anything, you can join this conversation live on Mondays if you go to the blog and find YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch. Follow me there, turn on your notifications, and when I go live, you'll be able to tune in. So, with that being said, have a good week. Follow me again. Please, I'm desperate. Just kidding. But that just flowed out so naturally. We'll see you next week. Go out there and consider your place in the universe. You know, you don't have to do a bunch of physics, but go consider your place in the universe. It'll create a whole bunch of. It should create a whole bunch of introspection. It's worth thinking about. It will, if anything, think about your own death, what that means to you, and what you should be doing to live a more meaningful life. There you go. Thanks for showing up. We'll see you next time.
読み直しているだけが読み直している読み直している